7, please.
Yeah.
Are you ready?
We got big testosterone energy over here today. Okay, you're gonna start the episode. All right, come here. Talk close to this guy.
Is it on?
Yeah.
Which count 3?
We're recording.
Okay. 1, 2, 3. Hey guys, welcome to Fox RC Podcast. Capacity gets a Bethany say. Capacity gets Nate Erie house.
Whoa! Special guest Bethany Nass Cseh and Nate Erie in the house.
The boy is back.
Yes.
I know you've been waiting for this moment. I'm finally here. The ratings, they're about to go back through the roof.
Yeah, we've had a dip in ratings, so we asked Nate to come home for the weekend.
Tell you, man, I'm saving the podcast once again.
Yes, and we're just grateful we put a shirt on. Seth.
Yeah.
Who's here today?
Bethany
and
Nate.
And Nate. What are we gonna do today, son?
Huh?
What are we gonna do today?
Let's do
What should we do?
please.
Drum roll, please. Yeah, we'll do Sethy's theme song.
Mr. Nate.
Watch
And then
Stranger Things, baby.
That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
That's right. Recording this July 1st.
Let's go.
Yep. Seth Erie's jumping right now.
Yep.
Nate Erie is just looking at himself, thinking, "Man, I got
chaos.
great
Just
hair.
chaos.
I look good this morning.
This
You look
is yes. This is what's happening." I don't know that like breakdown of like chaotic good, chaotic neutral, whatever. But whatever this is chaotic. I don't know what words you put after that. You know what I'm saying? Tell him, Seffi. Kayak. Okay, perfect. All right, Seth, you want to say anything to the people?
Yeah.
What do you want to say?
Tim.
Yeah.
Hey, too. And Nate too.
Yeah, and Nate too. Nate, what do you want to say
Guys,
to the people?
I love you. I miss you. I'm sorry you got to deal with my father here. I know. You all wish it could be me. Hit my theme song. What's up, everybody? You know what time it is. It's Nate. Play my theme song.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, ladies and gentlemen, that intro, I don't know that that's ever going to be topped. There was so much. There was a lot of energy. There was late teenage energy. There was early teenage energy. There was Down syndrome energy, and then there was a man who's very confident in his own skin energy. And so,
It was like a Lake Erie hurricane.
yeah, it was a perfect storm, if you will. Bethany, hello.
Hi. Yay. This is awesome.
How are you?
I'm doing really good. Thanks for asking. How are you?
Happy birthday.
Thank you. It was a lovely celebration. Lovely. I went out to dinner, and that was exactly what I wanted. Just somebody else cooking a good meal for me. So it was perfect.
What
was dinner?
Oh my gosh.
Do tell.
I went to a restaurant that I really enjoy, and I wanted to get something that I don't usually get. Ooh. So I ordered the king crab legs. It was a half pound.
Whoa.
And I guess I don't know the measurement of weight, because it was on a plate this big, and there were 2 tiny pieces like this and 2 small other pieces like this and just 1 little claw. And that's all there was for half pound, and I was starving afterwards.
They include the plate.
Yeah, the plate. I think so, because the plate was enormous and it was full of ice, and I'm just like, okay, well now it's like a tiny little meal. But it was still really lovely.
Oh, well, I'm glad to hear that. And you sound like you're kind of a low-key birthday celebrator.
Yes. And my birthday falls in between my son's birthdays. So we've got one on the 26th, mine's the 28th of June, and then my other son is the 30th. So I'm kind of sandwiched between the two, which is exactly what I'd rather have.
Yes.
I can kind of just skirt right under.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Yes, because they're not focused. They're not focused on mom's birthday yet. They're just, they're all about, Yeah. And
Totally.
when's your husband's birthday?
April 26th. And then I have a daughter whose birthday is October 30th.
Oh,
So,
wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I see you. I see what's happening.
Yeah. And now we have 3 teenagers in the house since my youngest son yesterday turned 13. So it's
wow. Yep.
all sorts of hormones and emotions and drama and anger, a lot of anger in my home. Yeah. Not for me. I'm not angry.
That's just you.
That's just no. I'm not. I kind of try to rise above until I'm in my own little space or going for a run and trying to get it all out. But
yes. So Bethany, and you know this already, but for the listener's sake, Tim and I were recording or planning to record an episode. The decision about Roe v. Wade drops. We go on without any sort of thought or preparation and record an episode, which, not always the smartest thing to do. And not shocking, people, of course, had reactions and opinions of their own. And so I just want to read real quick some of the messages that we got, because they're always helpful. One young lady said that I have a spot of nuance for your concerns about the comments that you're seeing, like now the real work of pro-life begins. I think some moderate people, or maybe progressive Christians, and we were fussing about that saying. But she's saying maybe some moderate people or progressive Christians are saying things like this to help people remember that pro-life Christians cannot feel like, hey, we won, so now our work is done. And she said, I've said, the idea of like now the work begins, to remind them that actually how we help babies is to help mothers and take care of their families. So is it possible that some people were waiting for a political process? But I also think a lot of people are trying to gently / politely redirect the conversation. Am I making sense? And we say, that's a great nuance. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
That the statement, now the work begins, isn't just a, and I was reacting to hearing it from people for whom this was a victory. Like this was the finish line. And so I was reacting in that context, but she raises another great context of saying, oh, no. It's a great reminder that if you're really concerned about this issue, like beyond its political capital and control value, then there has to be, a massive investment in infrastructure to care for women in difficult circumstances. Are we in agreement with this nuance? If so, say aye.
Aye.
Perfect.
No, I mean, absolutely. I think that that this is, when we think of it as a win, or when many people think of it as a win, it's only a win in a very small way. It is actually just the start of what needs to change in our country. And honestly, in some ways, I feel like it's the cart before the horse. The change needed to come first, and I'm fearful that the change will not come now because the win's already happened.
Yeah.
And so it feels like we can just like relax. And when I say we, I shouldn't say we. It feels like classically pro-life Christians in this country can just relax and feel like they've done their part and they're done now, instead of stepping to the plate and actually caring for the most vulnerable in our community. But I mean, obviously there's still a fight for some people with the more progressive states like California, and making sure that abortion is stopped in California even, or whatever the next fight will be. But the problem is I think the fight it's misplaced. It's a misplaced fight.
Tim, do you agree with that?
Aye.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think that's really the concern, Bethany. I think you have just nailed it. That this was almost the easier work.
Well, we didn't even do anything on this one. It was the Supreme Court overturned debate. I mean, it's like, talk about taking victories without any work whatsoever.
Well, but that was the reason that people would kind of hold their nose and vote for the former president.
Right.
Is for this reason. Like,
yep.
So there was a lot of energy, I think, provided by the ideal of this, this political victory. And but I think that's so good. That's almost the easier one. And some people I know would disagree and say, no, we've been fighting for this for 50 years.
Yep.
But
that's where the nuance thing gets really interesting, because I don't mean to pick at it, but I will for a second. We are already like, we spin out on the weirdest things, and now it's like that's a spin out on a definition of now the work begins, and that becomes a conversation argument, rather than again doing the work that it's just we're just so easily distracted. and put into like, we get caught up in these little eddies of easier or distracting conversations rather than just being like, let's just go actually tackle the problem here.
Yeah.
Like, let's debate the definition of something for the next 6 months, and then we'll debate the definition of something else, or I don't know.
Yeah. No,
We're very distracted people.
Yeah. Oh, Ukraine, is there still a war going on?
I know. As we talked about that last week, I have the notes from that sitting up from last week, and it's like, you know, I mentioned that working with those families that are still trying to get out of Afghanistan, and that's way up. That's not even on the back burner. That's not even on the stove anymore of a conversation. But those families are still running for their lives, and they have nothing. They're left with nothing. They have nothing when they arrive. And it's like these families with like 6, 7, lots of children, and they're just like landing in random countries, Pakistan, or even coming here, and they're arriving with nothing, or they're missing family members that are still behind that they don't have contact with anymore. It's like that's still happening all the time.
Yeah. Yep. Here's someone else that wrote in, and she has a lot of really good points to make. And so I'll just start reading, and then you guys kind of interrupt. But I asked her permission because there's some personal stuff in here. And she said, sure. She said, I'm having a hard time with the celebration around this court decision. I do understand the belief that image bearing starts at conception. I'm not sure if I believe that or not. I certainly did when I carried my 3 very wanted pregnancies. I have worked for 17 years in early intervention with children from birth to 3 with developmental delays and or disabilities. And prior to that, I worked in a school with children on the autistic spectrum and children classified as having multiple disabilities. When I was in high school and college, I worked at a local program for after school during summer that was for children with special needs to have opportunities to socialize, be in the community. Many of the kids I worked with were not verbal, and some had limited to no control over their bodies. And I had connections with each of them, and they had connections each with me. All of the children I've worked with over the years are special and able to contribute something to the world. So hallelujah for you, young lady, for working with kids like my son. I just am thrilled for people who have so much compassion for them. However, many of the families that I worked with had support. And when you have support, anything is possible. I am blessed with a large village to help raise my children. Not everyone has that. Not everyone has support. So I guess when I hear I'm happy there will be fewer abortions, and this is a really good point. She says, when I hear that I'm happy there will be fewer abortions, while I understand the sentiment, I also hear the unsaid part, which is there will be more unwanted children. Our society is not communal. There are not just enough supports in place to handle an influx of babies who cannot be or will not be raised by their birth parents. And all I can see right now is how much neglect those children will face. Even as a parent who desperately wants a child, we all make mistakes and cause some level of emotional rupture in our children. Tim, I'm sorry, that includes you. We were generally able to repair that. I don't know that it is loving or respecting an image bearer to bring them into a situation where they will not be cared for. So the concern here is, so if you restrict abortion, there will be more unwanted children, and that is a different kind of harm. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, she goes on, so I guess instead of feeling glad that there will be fewer abortions, what I really wish is that we could talk about fewer unwanted pregnancies, but I don't ever hear Christians talking about it, or if I do, it is the idea that abstinence until marriage is the way to avoid unwanted pregnancies. Mind you can have unwanted pregnancies in a marriage. I'm not sure why sex is such an uncomfortable thing for Christians to talk about. Oh, they talk about it. It's just in very weird ways. I've had 3 wanted, tried for pregnancies. I have 2 children who I love beyond measure. My first pregnancy ended in a miscarriage very early on. I had just enough time to get excited, tell our families, go for the first ultrasound, and then see the look of concern from the lab tech who couldn't review the results with me, and finally seeing a doctor who would do the ultrasound himself. I started bleeding the day of my next appointment. The doctor confirmed my miscarriage. He gave me the option for a D and C to ease the comfort of the miscarriage, and reviewed some of what I should expect during the procedure. I opted to miscarry naturally, and I'm not sure it is because of my relationship with God, because I don't know that I believe abortion is a sin, or because I was just holding on to the shred of hope that the doctor was wrong. Clearly he wasn't. I passed my embryo and bled for 6 weeks straight. I had to go to the doctor again weekly for blood work to make sure my pregnancy hormones were coming down. I had horrible depression. We had to wait 3 months to try again. I don't regret my choice to miscarry naturally, but I know I wouldn't choose it again. And then here's her point, or one of them. I lament for the women who will not have those options. Women who will have to carry stillborn fetuses and answer the questions from strangers about when they are due and what they are having. Women whose water will break at 20 weeks and must either risk sepsis if their bodies do not go into active labor or try to travel last minute to another state. Women who have complicated pregnancies and must wait for the embryo to develop in the fallopian tube until it bursts and damages their body or worse. I lament for women who are in unsafe relationships and find themselves pregnant. I lament for women who feel so much despair about their pregnancy that they take their own life. I lament for babies born to families who do not want them and who are unprepared to raise them. I lament for social service workers who will have higher caseloads and a harder time feeling successful in reaching everyone with whom they're trying to help. Yes, there will be fewer abortions, but there will be a cost in life for both women and babies that so many are trying to save from abortion. Whew.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's excellent.
Yeah. Things as a guy that don't enter. I mean, I can't imagine the miscarriage. I know, because I have friends, how painful that is, but I don't know it kind of from the inside, you know?
Yeah.
So that's interesting. There's this massively hidden cost. Any thoughts you guys want to add to that?
I appreciate all the nuance that she was bringing in. I feel like so much of this is painted into a black and white perspective that it's just like a talking point. These are real human beings, real women that are suffering and experiencing trauma within their bodies. And the last thing they need is more shame heaped on them, or a perspective that says that what's happening in their bodies is some sort of sin if they don't respond to it in the way that is now required. And that's really, that's just trauma heaped on trauma. It's hard to process that, especially if you don't have a community of people or a support system or people who love you. A lot of times it's an incredibly lonely and isolating experience for women that adds to even more mental health issues, suicidal tendencies, feelings of hopelessness in a really already impossible situation. So I like that she brought some nuance into that. Yeah.
No, that's really good. Just a couple more. Tim, did you want to say anything there?
No, again, thank you for sharing this. And I have no frame of reference to this at all. She had one thing, I was trying to look for it, where she said that we don't live in our world is not communal or something to that effect.
Yeah.
I think that is such a profound statement, because I think that Americans, and especially Christian Americans, we really put forward this idea that we are this really connected group of people. But I don't think that we are necessarily. I think Americans are very isolated and very, what's the word? Independent. And that's such a huge piece of the puzzle. Like, to go through something like this and not feel like you actually she may have an immediate tribe around her, but that idea of not living in a communal society is a really heavy, huge thing to make you feel so isolated and so cornered. It's just a really intense. I read an article too from who was a nurse. She was talking about how she had a patient, and I can't remember exactly what was happening during the pregnancy, but it was going south fast. And this was in the last week or two. And the doctor had to get on the phone with a lawyer to figure out what he could do or could not do while this woman was suffering and dying. And he was on the phone for hours with a lawyer trying to find a way around helping this woman, because they were afraid that they were all going to go to get prosecuted because of what was, what needed to be done. And finally, after hours and hours, he was able to help the woman. But it's like, I wish that people, whatever. We'll get to that kind of stuff, but it's just a lot. And this is I don't mean this disrespectfully, but this is the flesh and blood of this conversation. And this is what gets missed in all the rhetoric that people are throwing around everywhere, including people like me. When I get riled up and pointing fingers and yelling about stuff, I'm also missing the flesh and blood of the conversation.
There were a couple of pieces of feedback we got that were kind of lamenting our lament about this. I think you succeeded in missing the entire point. Which, man, are we capable of? Roe v. Wade established as a constitutional right the choice to murder. There are no other rights ensconced in law that half the country and God see as evil. None. It was a court error. The error has been corrected. That's why I'm tickled about it. These kinds of errors cause extreme damage to the fabric of the nation and to people's thinking. Correcting the damage done may be a lifetime, but it could not happen at all if the error itself is not corrected. It is like Jesus to care for all and to seek help. It is not like Jesus to ignore the single biggest reason for abortions, immorality. Promiscuity is real. It seems to me the church could start being salt and light by taking a pretty firm stance on that issue. Unless, of course, it offends somebody, then we should back off and soft pedal. So that was one comment. Another one said, we have to stick to what God's word says. Please speak truth. The Lord creates every soul knitted in their mother's womb. And then another comment was, I was shocked to hear Mike mourn the passing of a law that will save millions of lives. Feels like Mike is more about trying to get people to like him rather than represent God and his will. It is a sad slide to watch. And if you've ever seen me slide, I agree. That is not something you ever want to look at. So a couple of thoughts. I mean, first of all, I very much respect and appreciate the value of life. We've said this for 7 years now, passionately. When my son was diagnosed with Down syndrome in the womb, we were given the option to abort the pregnancy. And we ferociously and vociferously said, heck no, man. And in fact, one of the things that was heartbreaking to us are how often kids with Down syndrome are aborted, just sort of without even thinking about it. It's sort of an automatic decision for people. So I'm very, very passionate about being pro-life. I just think being pro-life is much bigger than being anti-abortion. And I think part of the lament comes and part of the conflict comes from, yes, I'm grateful for the lives of the unborn that will come into the world. But Jesus, as you would say, dear commenter, would care for all, including the weight and strain of this on women. And so I think that, and I'm no expert in constitutional law. Maybe Bethany is because she does about everything. But I don't know whether Roe was a correct decision or not, or overreach, or I have no idea about those sorts of things. Not anyway my area of expertise. But I do think that having people understand the Christian story as a story that's motivated to control other people is not a Christian story we want to tell. And so I do mourn for that. Absolutely. And to say that promiscuity is the issue, well, that's true. Absolutely. And Jesus does talk about it. The issue is taking a firm moral stance on promiscuity when our own house is such a piece of garbage about this issue. I'm not sure we have anything to say on the matter. So, okay. So I don't know that I buy that, that this was just a legal issue and hey, good, the legal issue was corrected. And if Jesus would deal with promiscuity and the church would be more anti-promiscuity, we have been, except the whole time people were engaging in promiscuity in the church. So I don't, not sure that's exactly what you were talking about before, right? It's just more talk. And very easy for, this is a dude, very easy for dudes to just see this in that very narrow focus of, yes, it's a constitutional issue, and miss all the nuance that the previous emailer and Bethany were bringing to the table.
Go ahead. I was just going to say the whole like debating of the terms and trying to make it into like a winning team and a losing team, I think is just a really good distraction for people who don't know or don't want to engage in like the difficult parts of what it means to be human. And when we separate things like that into black and white issues, it creates two different camps. And I don't know, I see the enemy as like the great divider. The enemy is always wanting to keep people divided in those two separate groups because that keeps people from like seeing the other as the enemy and one side is right and the other side is wrong. And that's the pull with that is that we can always blame the other side for all the problems in the world while seeing ourselves as, doing the right thing. But it also allows us to neglect the needs of others because of our own righteous beliefs. So if I've got the right side, then I don't need to care about what's happening over there because they had it wrong in the first place. And so, man, the enemy is so good at dividing human beings and dividing the church into two different camps. And then we can just point fingers and believe that we're doing just fine.
Yeah, it seems like very easy work on the behalf of whoever or whatever it is that is causing that division. Like we just love having an enemy or an opposition. And I think it's like you said too, like, especially when you tie righteousness into it, on both sides, that, it becomes such a easy pedestal to look down on the other side from. The other thing too, I was thinking about the promiscuity thing is like, you see a lot of those memes fly around about, men and they're all true, but you get the truth or the like facts of it get lost in the shuffle. But I was seeing something, there was a meme that was going around about like, women can only have one baby a year, whereas men can produce thousands, and it kind of passes by in your feed. But I stopped yesterday and I was just looking at it. I was thinking about it a little bit more. And so I went and researched just a little bit. So anyone can call out and email in whatever, but.
Oh, they will.
And they will.
They will.
That women can only get pregnant there was different, I've read a few articles and they all said something a little bit different, but it was somewhere between some of them said 1 day a month and some said 6, and there was varying days within there. So let's just say 6, whereas men can produce 1,000+ babies in a year if they were just going at it. But the promiscuity thing is so interesting within that framework of this is just not a male conversation. This entire conversation is about women.
Yep.
And the amount of like I down to like just the abortions, or just down, I don't know, it's such a terrible posture to hold. And I think a lot of people don't even hold it intentionally. It's just that women are the only ones that can have abortions. Women are the only ones that will ever be in need of something like that. So this conversation has nothing to do with men, whereas men are just like, from the promiscuity angle alone could curb this conversation to a completely moot point, like just in responsibility of what it means to be a man. And
that's right, exactly right.
And then because the 3 things that were on the Thomas's, it was Roe v. Wade, it was
Oberthal.
Same-sex marriage, but wasn't one of them contraceptives?
Yes.
And so it's just, what a backwards, it's just mind-boggling, taking more and more agency out of it for the men.
Well, so when I was getting my...
responsibility would be a better word than agency.
Yes. Yeah. When I was getting my graduate degree in ethics, we were looking at a group of academics that fell under the banner pro-life feminists. And their argument was that abortion, taking the conception and the legal status of the fetus off the table, abortion legitimizes male irresponsibility, was one of their big arguments. That if men took care with their, to your point, Tim, with their sexual appetites and honored and supported women that they had intimate relationships with and ended up getting pregnant instead of just offering to pay for the procedure, and then if the woman then says, well, no, I want to raise the baby, then the guy can say, well, I've offered, I'm out. I have no responsibility at all. So in a strange way, the conversation is about women, but it's also about the failure of men to be and not all, obviously, but in general. Early on, one of the biggest supporters, the fundraisers of abortion, was the Playboy Foundation. And because it really did provide a way for men to sort of offer and then excuse them from fatherhood, from all of the responsibilities that would come from taking care of somebody who they've impregnated and the offspring that would come from that. And I found that just super interesting. And that's part that I don't see a lot. Ever since I read that thread, I've sort of followed some of the women who were kind of at the forefront of that. And there isn't a lot of cultural talk about the passion that men have about this that comes from a place of self-interest rather than genuine care for women.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I thought that was a really interesting tie-in to the point you were making. And then Bethany, good Lord, the culture war motif that we've fallen into represents a catastrophic failure in the imagination of the church and is antichrist 100%. You cannot be a culture warrior and follow the Sermon on the Mount. You just can't. Yeah. You can be politically engaged and follow the Sermon on the Mount, but you cannot be a culture warrior demonizing your opponents, creating enemies, and thinking the ends justify the means. So that's the lament. The lament isn't that there'll be fewer abortions. The lament is the way we're doing it is not a way that represents well the cruciform approach of Jesus of Nazareth. For you, Bethany, what was it like for you hearing this? Like, was there a conflict for you and in you when this decision came down? What was your process? And if you're willing to kind of share from your perspective, what's that journey been like for the last couple of weeks?
Yeah. Lots of conversations with lots of people, it's been very interesting for sure. I've never had an abortion. I've never been pregnant. I've never had my womb used to house another human being. But I'm also very much about adoption. I have 3 kids that are adopted, and I've lost adoptions or potential adoptions that have come my way. And so there's a lot of heartache there over the years. I think it's just been really interesting because of the fact that I think you guys were talking about this the other day about like that, what is it called? That 7 mountain, what is that thing called?
Mandate. Yeah.
Yeah. And how this feels like, well, we're going to change the infrastructure up here and then it'll be a trickle down effect. But the fact of the matter is that Christ never started at the top and then there was a trickle down. He started at the bottom. And the problem with changing the top right now is that there's nothing at the bottom to hold what's going to be trickling down in the first place. Wow. So if we want to be culture warriors, which I hate that term, and I don't think that that's who we're called to be, but if we want to change the culture, as Christ followers, from the Beatitudes sort of perspective, it has to start at the bottom. We have to actually like create spaces of safety and security for women and children and for men to experience what is possible, what can be possible. We don't have that right now. The church has failed tremendously in that account. It doesn't mean that it'll always fail. I have hope for the church, and I have hope for a newness that can rise up from this. I'm not hopeless. And there are a lot of wonderful churches doing wonderful things in different communities. And I believe in the church. She is the hope of the world. But there is a grossness within the church that many of us experience of the purity culture, blaming women for promiscuity and saying that women are the problem. This is why you're pregnant, because you couldn't keep your pants on or whatever it is. And then there's so much shame placed on women because of that as well. And so how are we going to be able to take care of this trickle down of, well, finally we're not having any abortions, so we're finally going to be able to see all these babies, when we don't have a place for women to actually land on that makes them feel safe in the first place? And the church has been so untrustworthy in being able to hold women's pain in those spaces. So one of the reasons that women don't reach out to the church for help is because we have been untrustworthy to help. We have been the blame casters and the finger pointers and the finger waggers, and saying that, well, you made your bed, now you have to live in it. How many abortions come from women and girls who were regular church attenders and who weren't able to actually talk to their pastors about it or talk to church leaders about what they were experiencing, who were so afraid of sharing what they had going on because what would their parents think, or what would the church think of their parents, because they weren't raised right, obviously, since they got pregnant. And never once is it about, at least from my experience and what I've heard, never once has it been, well, where was the boy here? Where was the man? Where is he in this? And even with, now I'm just on a high horse here, but
do it.
Even in that picture of I think it's John 6, where the woman was caught in the act of adultery, not once do we ever hear a man involved in that. Not only just the sadness of her husband being next to her, or maybe even he had a rock in his hand to throw at her, but the man who was also caught in the act of adultery, he isn't held account. There's no accountability, no responsibility needed for men in Jesus's day and today. And I think that's where we are desperate to see change. So like creating these infrastructures and safety nets and care and, having formula and diapers and free childcare and free healthcare, all these things are so important, and it's all directed towards women and their children. But what is needed more than ever is that we actually hold men accountable. That when a woman gets pregnant, that she has somebody who is advocating for her. And if he is not advocating for her rights and make sure that she's taken care of, then that's when there's certain consequences, that he will maybe have his part of his paycheck taken out of his pay. And, there needs to be more. It needs to be more holistic. It's not just about women. It's about the entire
communal.
Family.
Yeah,
it is communal. Yeah.
So you personally, were you ever involved in quote pro-life sort of stuff?
Yeah, I definitely marched in rallies, and as a little girl all the way through almost to high school, I would march in pro-life rallies and held signs and picketed Planned Parenthood and had all the righteous indignation towards those things. I grew up in a conservative Baptist home and church. My mom used to say, and it's a fine argument, I guess, but she would always say, well, abortion isn't okay because two wrongs don't make a right. So the wrongness of having sex outside of wedlock, or of getting pregnant without being ready for a pregnancy, and the wrongness of abortion doesn't make it right. And that was kind of the argument that she would use. And I suppose I could see some of those things, but again, it's just, we're placing platitudes, or placing a saying on top of real human beings and their actual lives, and then the suffering that they are experiencing.
What and did that ever change? I don't know. Did you ever start to question your mom's wisdom on that, or the kind of righteous indignation you were carrying around? And if so, what caused that?
Yeah. I was homeschooled until freshman year of high school. And then I went to a conservative Christian high school in the Bay Area. And I just kept seeing this sort of inconsistency within Christian circles towards people that didn't fit the mold. So anybody who was maybe smoking cigarettes or smoking weed or partying, or they wore their pants too low or whatever it was, they didn't look the part of what it meant to be a good Christian person, would be watched and observed and could easily get into trouble and eventually get kicked out of this high school. And I remember being really frustrated with that, because I kept thinking, it seems like this Christian school should be the place where we get all the dropouts everywhere else. Like, this should be the place where those that are suffering, or those that are getting into trouble left and right, this should be the place for them. This shouldn't be the place where the perfect are. This should be, the hospital for the sick. And I would always be like, I'd go into the office and I'd be advocating for my friends who were going to be kicked out. And I was always a good kid, so like I was never in trouble, but man, so I think those sorts of inconsistencies, seeing that in the high school, seeing that in youth group, seeing that at my church, that if you didn't fit the mold, you didn't belong. And the same went for women and men. Like, girls were treated so differently than the boys at the school. And they were seen as, if there was any rumor about a girl doing something with a boy, two people at the same school, the girl would be dragged through the mud. She would be considered a slut, ostracized in some ways. The story would become something really big and horrible. And the guy was barely even mentioned. It's like he didn't even belong in the story whatsoever. And if he was mentioned, it was just like oh, well, good for him. I'm glad he got that blowjob or whatever it was that happened. And it was just this level of inconsistency. And it made me question, what about Christianity? What about Jesus? And what about the church do I actually affirm and believe in my own life? What can I actually hold on to? And what are the parts that make me really sad and sick and I cannot continue forth in? And abortion, or not abortion necessarily, but the pro-life, pro-choice distinctions became a little bit muddied for me. In the same ways as creation versus evolution got muddied, and women in ministry got muddied. All those things that were very black and white in the beginning. I realized that there's more to it than those sorts of answers that I was handed as a kid.
So the inconsistency was one piece of that, realizing it was more complicated. Was there another part? I mean, I don't know, does homeschooling curriculum or conservative Christian curriculum typically talk about sexual education or reproduction or any of those sorts of things? I
mean, maybe not from my experience. And maybe there's more of a good sex education sort of curriculum out there, but from my experience, there wasn't anything like that. When I was 17, I remember messing around with a boy in a hot tub, and I was late on my period, and I was so scared that I was pregnant, because I had no idea how a person could get pregnant necessarily. Yeah. I figured if I was late, it was probably because he ejaculated in the hot tub, and now I'm pregnant, and what am I going to do? And so I didn't know who to call except Planned Parenthood, because I heard that they had answers for pregnancies. So I called them and I was just like, this is what's happening. Does this mean I'm pregnant? And she said, it's very unlikely. Just wait a few days and see if you start your period. But at that point, I really questioned, like, if I'm pregnant, I will probably have to get an abortion. I don't know what I will do. I don't want to tell my parents. I don't want to tell anybody at the church. I don't feel like there's somebody that's safe that I can express this to. How do I share that I'm still a virgin, but now I'm pregnant? And, all these things were going through my head. but I was met with a lot of grace there. And then when and that was surprising. That was surprising for me to experience this phone call with Planned Parenthood, this place that I thought I would experience all sorts of guilt or shame or fear. And instead it was like a sweet woman on the other side of the line. And then when I was 20, I was going to get married in the next few months. And I heard that I needed to get on birth control, and I didn't know where else to go to get on birth control. And so I went to Planned Parenthood and got signed up for some sort of free low income birth control pills. And I was just very cared for there as well. And I went into this place expecting to find abortion marketing paraphernalia all over. And instead what I saw was a lot of family planning, a lot of women's health information on STDs, information on how to adopt and how to place your baby up for adoption or make an adoption plan. And there was stuff on abortion, but it was not the first thing. Now, I never went in pregnant, so I know that some people have experienced going in pregnant, and the first thing they're told is, well, the abortion is the right thing. I've heard stories like that, but from my experience, it was just kindness and care and compassion. I felt seen for myself instead of being like some sort of baby making machine or something like that. I felt very cared for.
And the family and the church, the places that should be safe for those convos, never entered your mind, I would imagine. Not even
a little bit, unfortunately. And so as a pastor, I've wanted to continually create spaces where women feel safe and honored and cared for, regardless of their past, present, or future circumstances. And that the church should be the safest and most wonderful place to have these sorts of conversations. And instead, it has been one that is untrustworthy or sweeping it under the rug or just not knowing how to deal with something that we were told is black and white and might not be as black and white.
One of the things, first of all, man, thank you, Bethany, for sharing that. What's the adoption journey been like? Because part of, and I know, man, there are tons of personal friends and acquaintances who have adopted out of foster care. Yeah. Because that was really the step. If we're going to provide an alternative, that has to come from the adoption process. And that adoption story's really been mixed for lots of people. It wasn't the glamorous show them how much Jesus loves them story that maybe I thought it might have been. What's it been like for you? When
we started the adoption process, I was still under a lot of the Christian mentality that we're looking to be wanted and desired by God. And the way that God will want and desire us is by the good things that we do. The whole gold stars in heaven, that sort of thing. Okay, God's pleased with me. I'm doing good. I'm on the fast path towards heaven. And I remember going towards adoption and having those weird thoughts in the back of my head. I'm doing the right thing for Jesus. This is the right thing to do, which is so gross to think about now. But it is definitely that sort of thinking was ingrained in my mind in many ways. But when we found out that we couldn't have biological children, we, looked into all sorts of different options for that and how to get pregnant. And we just really felt like we were meant to adopt. And we always wanted to adopt, but it was always, in our minds, it was always kind of second best to having biological children.
Okay. First of all, I can't imagine how painful that must have been.
Yeah.
I don't want to slide by that without going, oh my goodness, Bethany, I cannot imagine. I'm so sorry.
Thank you. It really was. It's, sorry, just one second. I gotta get this thing off of me.
What is it?
It's a tick from my cat. I know. No, I'm just gonna kind of smash it.
We're keeping this in here.
Yeah, let's, wow.
Yeah, we are pro-life, except in the case of ticks.
yeah, it was a very painful experience, a painful season. And it still is sometimes, being 43, there's like this reality that pregnancy is not happening for me. And I've heard time and again that you just need to adopt, because then I know so many people who adopted and then they got pregnant. Well, I mean, there's definitely those stories out there, but it's not the common or like the actual, the truth of it.
Right.
Anyway, so we definitely grieved for quite some time. We grieved the loss of bearing children together, and grieved the expectations that we had, or the future that we had envisioned for ourselves. And then we started the process of what it looked like to become adoptive parents. And it's a long process. It takes a year-long home study where you get background checks and income verification, and you need to get references to make sure that you are the right person for another person's child. And then we hooked up with an agency in Southern California and started that whole process, and got chosen right away for our first adoption, which is pretty amazing. Most people seem to wait for 5 or 6 years to be chosen. And then a month later, we had to give him back. The father was very adamant about fighting for his son's rights, and we just did not feel like we were. We didn't feel like we didn't feel like the Lord was saying that we should fight for this father's rights, and it didn't feel right to us to do so. So that was really hard to have. So we had him for a month, our first little guy. He was placed in 2 different families, 2 different times. We all had fought the father for a month or so. And then about a year later, we saw that he was placed with his dad, and his dad was able to keep him. So that's a fascinating story right there. And then we had about 13 other adoptions come our way in the course of 9 months that were all unsuccessful. There for births and all the things.
Oh my word.
Yeah. And then we moved to Humboldt and started a church, and we had no money and nothing left, no emotional space left or anything. And my son Isaac, his birth mom, called us, and his mom was in my parents' Bible study, and she said, "This is who I am." She had known that we were like the adopting type or something. She had found out when she had just found out she was pregnant, and so the whole time she was pregnant, she was thinking about us, and we said, "We're so sorry, we cannot adopt your baby," because we had just moved up to Humboldt to start this church. We had no jobs. We had no money. We didn't even have a place to live. We were living on our friend's couch. And she's like, "Well, I think that you're supposed to adopt him, so I'll call you back next month." And so we got jobs and everything, got a house, and drove down to the Bay Area and met Isaac. And I had known his birth mom beforehand. And we were able to bring him home. And then after that, we became foster parents. And started the whole fostering process, which takes about 6 months to a year of additional classes beyond your home study. There's just a lot of trauma in adoption, and especially in the foster system. And so they want you to be prepared before you say yes to fostering children. And so we became foster parents and fostered a few kids and adopted 2 of them. And the entire time, what has been incredibly important to Jason and I is to have open adoptions for our kids to know their families of origin, to love their birth moms, to be able to spend time with their birth moms. Our son's birth mom spent Christmas with us. She would spend the night at our house. My daughter's birth mom and her just went on this long trail ride through on horseback riding last week by themselves or with a group, but trying to foster as much of the extended family as possible is really hard and really good work. And not everybody can do that. Not every family of origin is safe or healthy enough to be in relationship with your kids. that's totally fine. Hopefully they'll get there. But that's been a really important thing for us to experience and to have. But it's not easy. Adoption is not some sort of like easy Christian religious sort of shiny thing that we're doing. Honestly, and this is really bad theology, but throughout the Bible, and especially with Pauline language, Paul uses the words of adoption all of the time. And so when we think of the words of adoption, we do place it as this like really righteous, beautiful thing, because Paul talks about us being adopted into God's family. So if we're adopted into God's family, then of course adoption is like the highest form of godlyhood that we can have. However, I think adoption is God's contingency plan. I don't think that adoption was what God originally intended. I think that God originally intended for human beings and God to have an unbroken relationship together. And because of the fall, adoption is the way that we can reunify ourselves back to the family of God. It is not God's best. I think God's best is for the family to stay together. And, you know, I could get in trouble for that for sure, but I don't think that adoption is the best thing for kids. I think the best thing for kids is our parents who are able to love them and support them and be healthy in themselves. And not everyone can do that. And so the backup plan is adoption.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
Thank you. And you're not going to get in trouble here.
Okay.
We're good.
Yeah, there's a lot of threads to pull on that I think are really interesting, because I think what you just said makes a lot of sense. And so when you follow that through and what the implications are for building, for people being healthy, for people being edified and fulfilled, for people being supported, to have those families and to be in safe spaces where we build a culture and an environment that breeds healthy families, that you know what I mean? Like the implications just go out and out and out and out and out and out and out. I have a question for you guys as pastors with this whole conversation. You know, in doing ministry, or I was talking to a friend with youth ministry the other day, and what I think is so interesting about deconstruction, and we've talked so much about it, is just this idea of asking somebody like, if you really think that this story is true, if you like at night are looking at the stars and you think there is this big deity, this cosmic entity that exists and created all this stuff and thought humanity was so cool, or such a worthy investment to become one and come down here, and you break it all the way down to that Jesus is who Jesus says he was, how does that reframe going forward back through the Gospels and everything of who it really is, Jesus really is, and then who you are as a Christ follower? So my question is, with gray areas, and Bethany, you just did such a good job of framing that in the adoption conversation, that there is so few black and white. There's just so much that you have to like navigate and make the most wise decisions you can, and be like just so invested in discernment with how you're navigating X, Y, Z, and then all the other letters of the alphabet. So the question is, what your guys' opinions are as shepherds, like within this conversation about abortion and about creating systems that men are more held accountable, that church can become the safe place for women who are in situations where they like the story that you told, like Planned Parenthood was safe, church was not. It should be the church is safe, not flipping it. Planned Parenthood should stay safe, but the church should also be a number one option for people. We have so many pastors who write in asking about the center set mindset. How do I do this? How do I do that? We just did an email, I don't know, an episode or two ago that was about a pastor who was trying to figure out how to navigate the LGBTQ conversation with his prayer warrior team. And you know, the pastors who are trying to figure out how to restructure church. Bethany, you said it. Susie said it too. And Susie said this a couple weeks ago, and it's been stuck in my head since then, that she said, because my tendency is like, nothing's working, let's blow the church up. this model doesn't work anymore. Let's burn it to the ground. Susie's like, I still think that plan A is the best option, meaning church. And that has been stuck in my head since she said it, because I think she's right. And, but then that requires a huge amount of work and restructuring and conversation, investment, yada, yada, yada. So the question is something like, miscarriages. I don't think that was probably God's design either, right? But it's a reality of the world that we live in. Abortion may have not been God's design, but is the reality of the world that we live in. As we like to use black and white rhetoric because I think like Bethany, like you said earlier, it helps us build things to fight against and to have true enemies that are easily definable and easy to just say nasty things about. But it seems like we're in more turbulent waters than that. We're not just in this, black and white thing. We're in turbulent waters. How do you guys, when you think about building a church or structuring a church or steering a church, and that still being the best option that we have as being a light in the world or whatever, how do you really see in this gray world, in these turbulent waters, steering a ship full of congregants or people into a place where that church does become the safest place, where Christians are not seen as people that are trying to take away and force and belittle and segregate and that kind of stuff? How do you guys see, for pastors across the country or the world, rebuilding this thing or re-steering this thing or doing it in a way that will foster that environment? It's a very long question.
Yeah. I think that's a really good question, because as spiritual leaders, there is an expectation that we will be able to hold space for people. And I think the church and a lot of people have expected the church and leaders to have answers for their questions. So maybe they'll come to the church if they feel safe enough, and they'll ask what the answer is to their hard situation, whatever it is, even if it's an abortion, keeping a child, whatever it is. And there's an expectation for the leader to give the answer and then for them to walk away with whatever it is that they need to do. And the same thing as like when we were all teenagers, we asked our youth group leader, like, how far is too far? And we were looking for a very specific answer. Yeah. And unfortunately, there's not one all of the time. And when I look at Jesus, it seems like every time he was asked a question, he seemed to, most of the time, answer with a question, almost returning it back to the person, almost expecting the person to be able to know how to answer it for themselves, maybe trusting that person's intuition and wisdom that the Imago Dei places within each of us. And as Christians, and I think that this is the hardest thing, is because this is a policy, a government mandated policy that is very God-based, Bible-based, I guess, in some degree, over our country. So a lot of people are really upset at Christians for making this happen, because this is a Christian thing instead of a human thing for people who are not Christian. So from the Christian perspective, if somebody is coming to me asking questions or needing answers, I would love to help them tap into the Holy Spirit and allow the Holy Spirit to guide them in the ways that the Holy Spirit always does. Because this is if this is a Christian thing, then we have to trust that the Holy Spirit will guide the people that sometimes I might not have the answers for. And I don't think I should have the answers for all the time as well. And the minute I believe I do have the answers is the minute that I've kind of like elbowed the Spirit out and placed myself as the final authority in a person's life. And that's not my role or my job. And it's a little bit idolatrous. And it's something that I find myself wanting to do from time to time, because I like being the hero in somebody's story.
Bam. That's really good. And Bethany, I think you embody one of the things I would say in response to Tim, which is to have women in public, visible, authoritative roles in every area of the church, with real power, real authority, in a collaborative environment where all of that intuition and all of that sensitivity is not only welcomed but prioritized. And then for me, Tim, the things that are constantly in my brain as a shepherd. I do not consider myself a shepherd. Are things like the community of God is the focus of the New Testament, not the world. So the ultimate imaginative and energizing focus that I have isn't about how to fix the world. It's about what the church can do to be a healthy community. And so much of that are embodying the practices of shalom, right? Forgiveness, reconciliation, honesty, lament. So there's a ton invested there. For me, it's also becoming a cruciform person and yielding rights in order to expend myself for the sake of other people. And then the third thing is to put into practice and embody new creation dynamics that and resist old creation dynamics that would define things in culture war terms, and instead to put on the fact that there are far larger issues than political outcomes, and that the goal of the resurrected people of God isn't to achieve certain policy positions, but rather to embody the same grace that Jesus gave us to others, which, according to Jesus himself, means that there was rain for the righteous and the unrighteous alike. And so I don't get to discriminate about who gets invited to the Lord's table and who doesn't. I'm there as a gift recipient and only that. And so who am I to judge other recipients of the great gift? So in that matrix, I think discernment can be done, but only in that matrix. Us sitting with one other person or us sitting trying to figure it out on our own, I think is the least healthy and biblically faithful way of navigating some of these issues. It has to be done in community. In that community has to have representation in order for all points of view to be brought to the table and equally considered.
Yeah.
That's
Teaching discernment is such an interesting, I keep coming back to that. And when Bethany, when you brought up that way that Jesus would, it's therapy, right? It's answering a question with a question to provoke someone to really work through and inhabit what the answer is. And I think that's such a, it's a profound thing, because you have to, in that process, you're forced to sort through, instead of just being like, hey, I need an answer to this question so that I can write it on my notepad so that I have rules and laws to live by, or that I have rhetorical responses that I can just throw at people. Instead, it's like, what happens when you embody the response and you embody the answer? And Jesus did that. Like, he was constantly like, well, I don't know, like da-da-da-da-da, and making people really invest in understanding what it was. And, the church model has become more, someone talks and you go home. I made my wife sit down with me the other day and be like, I need you to explain to me pedagogically how people learn, why, and what the best teaching practices are. And then I need you to take a step back and think about that on Sunday morning and show me how, if I want to achieve X, Y, and Z on Sunday morning with a group of people, and how that works from a pedagogical standpoint. And so we had an hour and a half long conversation where I was just taking notes, and she was breaking down, this is how this works in the classroom, but this is how this might work in an effective way on Sunday morning, so that people aren't just being like, that was great, and they bail, and then they wait for that great kind of thing, Mike's pep rally for Jesus the next Sunday morning, but instead learning how to inhabit the conversation so that they actually walk out Sunday morning with pieces of something that causes them to move forward, or causes them to change, or causes them to understand theme, or causes them to whatever your goal is. I think that's just such an profound and interesting concept, like teaching people discernment or critical thinking, or just being able to inhabit a place where they can interact with information and understand what it means to be Christ-like in this world is really a profound and terrifying job that you guys have. Congratulations.
Don't pretend like you get out of it, Stafford. When you ask these, you shepherds, dear listener, dear singular listener, Stafford
Our singular listeners here. She's in the room.
Stafford is more of a shepherd than Erie could ever be, and everyone knows that. Oh, yes. We'll just take a poll. You're in crisis. Who do you go to, Tim or Mike? The answer is Tim. The answer is Bethany. But if we limited that, oh my goodness, Tim. Like, dude, you're so shepherding. Don't even pretend. I'm calling you out.
Move along.
All right. Well, Bethany, man, we appreciate you. Thank you for just adding some flavor and some depth and richness to this conversation that there's just nothing in my universe that can understand some of the things that you've gone through. And I'm just so grateful for your generosity and sharing, your story and wisdom as we process this together. It's just, it embodies something that we think is so central to the way of Jesus, which is this, divine image is found in male and female together. It's not just a singular gender out there floating along thinking they've got it figured out. So
yeah.
Thank you. And again, Bethany, where can people find you? You're getting ready. You got sermon prep to do now. So where can they tune in for Bethany's sermons? Where do they go?
You can find it on YouTube. You'd have to look up Catalyst Church Humboldt, and that's HUMBOLDT.
Wow.
And so Catalyst Church Humboldt is where the sermons usually are. I'm on Instagram and Facebook as well. Bethany Nass Cseh, and that's CSEH on Instagram.
The fact that Seth Erie knows it's Bethany Cseh, one word, is very impressive. He was saying that early when he was like, it's Bethany Cseh. Yes. So I'm just saying, when you get lodged in his brain, that's a big deal. Because once it's in there, it doesn't leave. And I can say that both positively and negatively.
I feel very honored. Very honored.
All right. So anyway, dear listener, thanks for tuning in. We love you guys. And you're the best. Bye.
Thank you for listening to this conversation. Voxology is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that is supported by listeners just like yourself. If you'd like to partner with us, you can do so at patreon.com/Voxology. You can also join the community and hang out and chat with us on the socials. Facebook.com/Voxology Podcast and on Instagram @Voxology. Thank you for walking the long road with us.